Alright everybody, this is Lecture 9. This is the intro lecture to persuasion. We're getting ready to start talking about persuasion theories. We're going to talk about advertising, we're going to talk about propaganda and diffusion. And all of these topics are built on the idea of persuasion. So this lecture is just to give you an idea of what persuasion is, kind of encapsulated a little bit, because it's something we probably all understand on an intuitive level, but maybe something we haven't thought about deeply. So this lecture is just to give you a little bit of background on the study of persuasion. So what is persuasion? The basic definition we're going to use in class is this one on the screen. It's the process by which attitudes are changed or maintained. Now the idea here that's kind of encapsulated in this is this idea that it's a process, which implies that there's time and time is involved. So you can change attitudes over time, or you can maintain them over time. Now change would look like this first line here that says, you begin the day liking Pepsi, you see something during the day, and by the end of the day you like Coke. That's attitude change. You went from liking Pepsi to liking Coke. Maintained, right? That is where you start off liking Pepsi, and then at the end of the day you still like Pepsi. That's maintaining your attitude, so you're not necessarily changing, but you're sticking with the same attitude. Now in both of these models, the idea is that information or something comes in between when you first started liking Pepsi and then at the end of the day. That information can change your preference so that you go from liking Pepsi to liking Coke, or can maintain your preference, going from liking Pepsi and still liking Pepsi at the end of the day. Now this idea that persuasion is the process by which attitudes are changed, that kind of implies that we need to know what an attitude is. Now an attitude is a positive or negative evaluation of something. Something can be anything, basically. It can be a person, it can be a place, it can be a thing. So you might like a certain candidate for president, right? You might have a positive evaluation of them. You might have a particular place that you find that you like a lot. Or you might have an object or a drink or food or something that you like a lot. Either way, it's a positive or negative evaluation. So it's not just liking, it's also disliking. So attitudes can be positive, they can be negative, and they can be anywhere in between. So neutral, for example, mildly positive, mildly negative, and I'll talk about these in a little bit and give you some more examples of that. Now, we've talked a little bit about what an attitude is, that it's an evaluation of something. So I just want to compare an attitude and information and talk about how they're different, because attitudes and information are different pieces of information, basically. Information is something like that you see on the screen. Pepsi Throwback is a soda. Now, that's just information. It's telling you what Pepsi Throwback is. In and of itself, it doesn't imply anything about Pepsi Throwback. It's just telling you what it is. It's no different than saying grass is green or the sky is blue. You're just providing information in statements like that. Now an attitude is an evaluation of Pepsi Throwback. So it can be something like, I like Pepsi Throwback, or I don't like Pepsi Throwback. Or it can be anywhere in between, like I was talking about earlier. You can say, Pepsi Throwback, well, it's okay. Pepsi Throwback, I really don't care. Pepsi Throwback, I like it, but not as much as the Hoff. So any of one of these can be an attitude. Now, questions still remain about, well, how are attitudes formed? Is it based on information? Is it based on attitudes about other objects? Is it based on emotions? And basically, it can be based on all three of these things. So let's say it's an attitude based on information. You might know this bit of information that Pepsi Throwback is unhealthy. It's got a lot of calories and they don't really provide you with anything other than a quick sugar buzz. So if you're really into living a healthy lifestyle and you don't want to drink unhealthy things, that bit of information could cause you to form a negative attitude in and of itself, right? Pepsi Throwback is unhealthy. It's just applying this kind of broad negative characteristic with Pepsi Throwback, and that type of information can cause people to form attitudes. Now, that's not the only way attitudes can be formed. They can also be based on other attitudes. So, for example, let's say you know the fact that Pepsi Throwback uses sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup. Well, if you have a negative reaction to high fructose corn syrup, if you have a negative attitude about that, this bit of information could preference you to Pepsi over other products. It could make you think that Pepsi's good. You might have a favorable attitude just based on this information. But it's also information that it has an attitude a component with it, right? So there's the evaluation of high fructose corn syrup. I don't like it. So it's based on an attitude about something regarding the product. In addition to being based on other attitudes, attitudes can be based on emotions. So, for example, going back to Pepsi Throwback, if you like the taste of it, that's going to give you pleasure, right? That's a positive emotion. That can cause you to form a positive attitude towards it. Pepsi Throwback doesn't taste good, right? You don't like the flavor of it. That would cause displeasure, and that could cause a negative attitude. So you can see here that attitudes can be formed based on information, they can be based on other attitudes, and they can also be based on just simple emotions, which is also called affect. Alright, so we've talked a little bit about how attitudes are formed. I'm going to talk a little bit about theories of attitude change. Now, two questions that we need to ask ourselves when we think about theories of attitude change is how does the theory basically conceptualize what an attitude is. So we can ask questions like, are attitudes rational or are they emotional? Now this is a big question that's kind of the field's been interested in for a long time, all the way back to psychology, right? People were curious, are they based on cognition, so are attitudes based on information alone, or are they based on emotion? Now early theories perceived them to be based mostly on cognition. So the idea was that you can change people's attitude by giving them information. Just information by itself should cause people to have the correct attitudes, right? They should, everybody should be able to come to the same conclusion, basically. So it was this idea that humans are logical, that we're rational, that we can reason very well, and that through that we can come to the correct attitudes. So that's what kind of early theories are based on. Now, newer theories argue that attitudes are based on dual processes, that it's not just information alone, it's also emotion that happens. So we have attitudes that are based on cognition and emotion. So we feel it and we think it. That's the kind of the idea now, that's what the current research believes, that attitudes are a combination of both. And it really depends on the context of the attitude to determine which is stronger. So in some cases, cognition is going to be the stronger component of the attitude. Information, basically, things that you think, things that you know, are going to be the basis of attitudes, and they're going to outweigh your emotional feelings about attitudes. So think about buying a car, right? You might have certain emotions with certain cars, but some people are going to base their decision on buying a car purely on information, right? They're going to look at how much does the car cost. That's going to be a big determinant. I know that's a big determinant in the first car that I bought. It wasn't necessarily how much did I like the car, could I afford it? Is the car safe? That's another kind of information that you can base your decision on. But other people are going to buy cars based on how they make them feel, right? So everybody, I think, can picture the 50-year-old guy who's going through a midlife crisis, and he buys, a really fast red sports car because it makes him feel better. So he's basing his attitude about that car maybe more on the emotional aspect and isn't really thinking about the fact that it only gets like 15 miles to the gallon, the insurance is like unbelievable, and it's not really that great of a car in and of itself. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you can see how cognition and emotion can be the basis of attitudes. That's going to be important for the rest of our lectures on persuasion and throughout the course. So this is kind of an important topic. Just want to make sure everybody gets it. If you're still having questions, send me an email. I'll see if I can try to answer those questions. The next thing I want you guys to do is watch the next lecture. It's from slide 3 to the end of the lecture. You're going to watch for a description of various models of attitude change. And basically, I kind of covered the beginning information in that lecture and this lecture, so you don't need to watch the first 3 slides of it. Just watch from where he starts talking about the theories themselves until the end.